All right, we're here in the garage again, and we're gonna talk about the Mikolo Anubis 2.0 Ultimate, which I've had for a couple of weeks now, and I've actually done a full week of training on this thing to, number one, make sure I could, and number two, also so I get some B-roll, which I probably deleted some by accident, so you might see me wearing the same outfit using it today. Spoiler alert. But I took on this opportunity from Mikolo, opposed to other brands, because, number one, I get approached all the time from companies saying, hey, will you try XYZ? And most of the cases I say no because it's something I know I won't use or something I might not want or just something I know I won't like. In this case, one of the reasons why I took on this particular one from Mikolo was because taking a look at the bones, the structure of this thing, it reminds me of a power rack that I own downstairs, which is the equivalent of 3x3 uprights, 1-inch holes, which are offset, 2 inches on center. And it literally looks, if you strip out the Smith machine, the functional trainer, it looks like your typical 4-post rack, which is something I really like because when I take a look at the competition out there and some of the other brands, you have weird post sizes, you have weird holes, weird spacing, stuff that you can't adapt other brands to, and that's not stuff I'm really big fans of. So having something that's really adaptable is really selling to me, not to mention, again, it looks more like a power cage, a power rack, something that I could potentially use. Now, there are some trade-offs with this. Again, this is a budget-friendly all-in-one, all right? So list price on this is $2,700, which when you compare to some of the offerings from Rogue or Rep, it's more than half the cost less. So you are going to get some trade-offs with that. Number one, this is 12 gauge steel, where most of those other ones are 11 gauge. I don't think for this application it's a big deal because you're saving money. You're also saving on just the maneuverability of it when you're getting this in, which also is going to help with shipping. Mikolo shipped this thing to me via FedEx, which came in 9 boxes via FedEx ground, all of which showed up in great shape, fully bubble wrapped, all that stuff, so no issues with that. And even by myself, I was able to move all of it without an issue. Whereas in sometimes if you get some of these bigger freight deliveries, it's nice because everything's packed on a pallet, but you can still experience damage that way. And sometimes it's to the point where you just need help either getting it off the pallet, getting rid of the pallet, assembling stuff. So I was able to build all this all by myself, which I have for most of the stuff in my gym. But obviously it will go faster and more efficient if you do have help. But for $2,700, this thing potentially offers a lot, from a power rack to a Smith machine to a functional trainer. So let's talk about each one and what I think about them for my own personal training styles. All right, so let's start in the power rack portion, if you will. Now let's be clear, this is not a power rack you are lifting a barbell in. This is more of a half rack. Because this is a full cage and because it has components inside, you would not be doing barbell movements inside of this rack. You'd be doing it outside, which again is fine because each area of use is really defined for its intended purpose. And if for barbell movements or the power rack portion is going to be the half rack side, or what's similar to a squat stand in some cases. But again, you have the 3x3 uprights with 1-inch holes, which I like because it means you can put all your accessories on here, and I'll be talking about that quite a bit. It does come in the Ultimate package with these sandwich-style J-cups, which have a securing pin on them. They're easily adjustable and they work fine. I was able to complete a full week of barbell-style movements in here without issue because, let's be honest, a power rack for the most part is pretty simple. It's just uprights, cups of some sort, and spotter arms of some sort. So really simple and easy to use, and to be honest, it's hard to kind of mess up, but you do get these sandwich-style J-cups included. Because you're lifting outside of the rack, however, safety is also a big concern, so it's always good to have spotter arms. This one does include them, which are pretty unique. They do have some standard features that we'll see on some of the higher-end ones, like UHMW plastic to protect the barbells. This also does 1-inch holes, so if you want to add other accessories like leg rollers or handles and stuff like that, you can get pretty creative with that. But what's really creative about this is the fact that it has this drop-down leg. And again, one of the reasons I really like training inside a rack for the most part is because I feel more secure having a safety that connects to the front and the back. Now in this case, there's no connecting to the other side, but this drop-down leg allows you to actually have more support in that regard. So it works really simple. It folds up and away when not in use. And when you want to use it, you just pull a pin, drop the leg down, and then adjust the height accordingly within reason. Meaning that if you go way up here to shoulder height, obviously there is not enough leg room there to hold or house that extra piece, so you would not be able to touch the floor from up high. But about waist level or below, you're good, no problems. And it does really add more stability to this piece which I really like to see. The lifting area here is about 30-ish inches, which is what I'm accustomed to in my own racks. So again, really familiar overall, and I like this. Other things I like about this: up top, you have a multi-grip pull-up bar. This rack itself comes in at just around 92 inches. So for me being 6'3", and also wearing this obnoxiously tall hat in this fashion at least, you can tell that if I were doing pull-ups on here, which I would enjoy doing because there's lots of grip potentially to use, all of which have a light knurl to them, I would have to lift my legs. But again, that's something I'm accustomed to and having owned 90-inch racks in the past from other brands. But I do like the way that this is integrated in, gives you lots of different pull-up options, and other companies that I've seen have done in this style, I have noted that sometimes you do get a little bit of shake on here, depending on how tightened these bolts are. Not had an issue with this one. So the pull-up bar aspect on this works really good. And again, the power rack side is kind of hard to mess up, but this is super sufficient for any lift that you would do. You do have to deal with the trolleys in some instances, but again, at my height, even at max height for the J-Cups, I don't imagine many people would be trying to mount these any higher than as is. Now that being said though, there is not perfect. There are a couple of complaints or things that I would like to see improved. Number one is on the J-Cups themselves and the other accessories that attach to this. This is their ultimate package. However, on the inside of these pieces of equipment, you have no protection, which is typically standard for most companies these days. So I would like to see some UHMW added to the inside of these. Because of that, and just because of the design, you will note that all of these attachments fit a little loose. So I think by adding that protection, number one, you're going to protect the rack and the pieces a little bit more, but also you might tighten this down just a little bit, which again, I would like to see. Another thing I'd like to see improved upon is the actual pins that secure, in this case, the J-Cups. While that is nice that it secures them, the pins themselves are not secure at all, as they're just basically just on there, meaning I could take a finger, or if I knock these with a weight, they will pop right out. So they do have a little ball that it's supposed to help hold them in. It's too small for the holes drilled. So again, it doesn't actually stay on very well. It's not a mag pin. So there are a couple of ways that they could improve that. But as of right now, I would like to see those things improved. Speaking of which, you do also have some securing pins, some bigger pins down here on the spotter arms. Again, same kind of thing. They do not stay in very well if pushed. Now, truth be told, are they ever going to get knocked out? Maybe, probably not, but there is a chance, and I would like to see those improved as well. And I'll show you some B-roll to show you what I mean. But otherwise, in terms of power rack, this is super functional, and I could definitely get all of my barbell training in on this. All right, next let's talk about the Smith machine. And you guys know, or maybe you don't know, in the past I took on other equipment specifically because my wife wanted a Smith machine here at our home gym. That piece did not work out. The Smith machine was not integrated well at all. Total opposite story here for the Mikolo. I actually really like this Smith machine. I've been able to do some stuff that I haven't been able to do since my commercial gym days, which are just really some kind of more form-focused squats where you can adjust where your feet position are. You don't have to worry about balancing the weight. Things like calf work on this, as well as rowing movements as well. This thing has worked like a dream. Now, some things I like about this one is the bar itself is very heavy. It's not a hollow bar. So even unracking this thing, adding the weight in of the trolleys that this sits on itself, it's got to weigh more than 40 pounds. So it's definitely heavier than a normal bar, which I like because that means you have to load less weight, and any movement I'm going to be doing is going to be more than 45 pounds in most cases. You do get a knurled bar as well, although there is no center knurl, so that might be an easy add-on for some people to put on and would just be nice to see. You do get ring marks on here, and the knurl itself is pretty standard, I'd say, for a gym bar, meaning that it is not aggressive by any means, but for most of the movements you'll be doing, you don't have to worry about grip because you're in this fixed space. You get 12 adjustment points on the sides, which is nice to see. I've seen some Smith machines in these type of racks with less points. You have adjustable spotters as well. And like I said, the whole system works really, really well itself. One of the things that I will call out as well is when you take the bar out, sometimes you see a lot of slop when you're only putting pressure on one side of the bar. In this case, the bar stays pretty straight the whole time, which again is nice to see. You will note though, however, due to the weight of this bar, it's not offset by any means. So some Smith machines, you have a little bit of give. In this case, there's really nothing you can do, which I don't really mind either way. Like, I wouldn't want it to be different. It's fine for the use case. And like I said, I've really enjoyed adding this in as a way to add volume into my legs or just do some movements without having to worry about, the bar path. And I just can worry on the contraction and the feel of the weights. Now, the one thing I will say, or maybe a couple things, how could this potentially be improved? Number one, the weight horns on this thing aren't very long. Again, most of the movements I would be doing on here wouldn't require it, but in this setup where I'm using bumpers, it could potentially be very easy to max out the sleeves on here. Also, just the movement of unracking and re-racking could be a little bit smoother. I think part of it might just be that I haven't broken this in enough yet. And again, it's nothing that I've had an issue with, but I could see potentially my wife having issue with that, or maybe even the weight of this bar without kind of any of that offset or help initially. She might find this a little bit heavy up front, but she has used this and has said that she likes it a lot as well. So overall, Smith Machine, very solid on this. All right, so next let's talk about the functional trainer, which, spoiler alert, I've liked a lot, but it's not without its flaws. So first of all, something that everyone likes to see is on these, just pulling the pin and being able to move these up and down. As you can tell, pretty easy to do even with one hand. It has these handles, which are nice, they're knurled, but you can adjust it very easily. Taking a look at the pulley system itself, it comes with aluminum pulleys, which a lot of people are very big on. And then in terms of the handles and stuff, which I'll talk about at the end, you do get a ton of other attachments again, because this is the ultimate package. Now let's go ahead and throw some weight on here. As I mentioned earlier, you get dual 175-pound stacks. Mikolo tells me that they're in the process of upgrading that to be potentially up to 225 pounds. On some of the other models of this, the non-ultimate package, you can just get weight horns on here as well. So if you don't want to have the stacks included, you could save some money that way potentially, but why not go ultimate when you go ultimate? In terms of the action on this, there is really no slop on here. Again, you set the tension on here by pulling the cable through and tightening it where you want, so you can adjust that as need be. But in terms of the actual action on here, really smooth and really quiet as well, which I like to see. So it feels really good from the pull. This is a 2-to-1 ratio, however, throughout the entire rack. So even though they're listed as 175-pound stacks, you're going to have to half that. But again, in terms of use as a functional trainer, either just using one or two at a time, things have worked really well. Now this is a little bit narrow, so doing things like flies, obviously, you're going to be somewhat restricted on that in terms of where these pulleys can go, but everything flows and moves really, really smoothly. Now, one of the things that they sell this rack on is also having a lat pull down. So they have basically what equates to a lat pull down bar that would attach here, and they also have a leg brace / low row foot pad, which I'll show you in some B-roll. Now, if you know where I'm going with this, one of the issues I have with this particular setup is, even though it's great as a functional trainer, where typically that 2-to-1 ratio is fine for the movements that you'll be doing on here, when it comes to things like lat pull downs and low rows, most people are fairly stronger in that regard. So having half of a 170-pound stack, I've found is not going to be sufficient enough for stronger lifters, meaning that I can easily max out this stack on either without issue. Now there are some workarounds on this. I went and got my loader pin that I put on here and put some weights on. A little bit tough for me, obviously, because I'm using bumpers up here in the garage, but if I use my calibrated plates, I'd be able to fit more weight on. But even with an extra almost 100 pounds on here, it's still something that I don't necessarily struggle with without a warm-up. And it just doesn't really fit super well in here given the size of the stack and whatnot. So if they could come up with a way to maybe add plates on here or bands on here, that could potentially be beneficial. So I wouldn't really use this for lat pull downs or low rows. I will say, however, as you can see in the video, with the seat set up and depending on where you put the bench or whatever you're sitting on, you can get this. So this is a very vertical pull, which is nice to see because some are so close to the point where you can't get a really true vertical pull. And I can get a full extension because I'm using a bench that is fairly short and close to the ground. But again, you might have to adjust or adapt depending on the bench that you would use or your own arm length or the attachments that you're putting on here. So overall, great functional trainer, not so good for lat pull downs or low rows. All right, so I mentioned this is the ultimate rack. I've called out some of the things that come with it already, but you also get this pegboard on the back as well as these hooks in order to put the accessories that it shipped with, which include things like this rope attachment, the lat pull down attachment, this straight bar that actually connects across the functional trainer, so you can do some pretty unique things like that. In fact, you could probably find a way to do seated rows or lat pull downs with it, assuming you have some way to brace your legs. That could be an option where you could use both stacks in that regard. You get a T-bar handle row because you also get a landmine attachment, which is nice to see, and I'll show you some B-roll of that. An ankle cuff, and then also just this smaller straight bar, which you can use for curls, tricep push downs, or whatever your heart desires. So again, all part of this ultimate package, as is some of the other things I've already called out. I do really like a couple of things about the design of this rack outside of just the basic function. They have this mirrored finish when it comes to the nameplates, both in the rack header and on the sides of the shrouds up top. It makes it feel more premium or classy when this is in actuality a very budget-friendly option. You do also, in the back portion of this, you get a stabilizer post slash kind of catch-all for things, meaning that Mikolo advertises it as a way to hold your spotter arms and your J-cups when not in use, which I do like, kind of repurposing that. But I also look at it as a point where you can attach a whole bunch of other stuff, again, given that 3x3 1-inch hardware. As part of this ultimate package, you also do get one barbell holder included. I have a deadlift bar of all things in there because, again, why wouldn't you have a deadlift bar in there? But again, it's nice to see that it's on here. Just the way that it's mounted, however, though, where it goes, I would like to see maybe some bottom or some more UHMW on it, because right now the actual barbell is just resting on the ground in terms of its end cap. So overall, there's a lot to like about this rack, especially for the price point. Now, there are some things that could be improved, most of which I've called out. The other things I would really like to see is just for an ultimate package, I would think that they'd include weight horns on this. Like this back post, perfect place to put a couple of weight horns to hold all your weights. As is, I have them on the inside, and these are my own weight storage pins that I provided, none are provided for you. I have them on the inside in this regard only because when I installed this rack, I wanted it as close to the wall as possible because I thought I was gonna park my car in here and then all this other gym equipment showed up. So I pushed this back as far as possible, and the weight would not really fit too well right there, right now. But I would really like to see that. Again, it seems like a pretty low-hanging fruit and would add a ton of versatility, and anyone using this for a power rack, which they should have weights, and otherwise they're gonna have to find another option to get those off the floor. But at the end of the day, for $2,700, like, I could get almost all of my training done in here. Like I said, there are some workarounds you need to do for the lat pull down and low row, but otherwise functionally, this thing is really hard to beat at the price point and is quite attractive when compared to other brands out there. But I'd love to hear what you think about this particular rack and all-in-ones in general. Is this something that you would go for or not? Let me know in the comment section down below. In the meantime, as always, thanks for watching and stay big.